What if the absolute hardest, the most productive, paradigm-shifting work you could possibly do today is, well, absolutely nothing?
Right. It sounds completely backwards.
It does. I mean, it sounds like a paradox. We live in a world that constantly measures our worth by our output.
Right, absolutely. By how fast we're moving.
Exactly, by how loudly we're hustling. So the idea of deliberate, intentional stillness, it feels almost offensive to our modern brains.
It feels like failure, honestly.
It really does. But today we are exploring a set of texts that argue your current state of exhaustion, like that deep, bone-weary fatigue you might be feeling right now, isn't a sign that you are failing at all.
It's actually the opposite.
Right. According to these sources, it is a profound signal that a massive, invisible threshold is approaching. So welcome to this deep dive.
It's so good to be here.
Today, we are immersing ourselves in two highly specific, deeply prophetic texts. They are called Path of Inspiration and Divine Chosen Order.
Two really fascinating sources.
Yeah, and the mission of our conversation today is to unpack the spiritual architecture these texts describe, because they are written directly to individuals who carry what the authors call the mark of the chosen.
And we should clarify that term right away, I think.
Please do.
Yeah, because when people hear chosen, they often think of some elite, ego-driven status, like you won a spiritual lottery.
Right, like you're better than everyone else. But that's not what the texts mean.
Not at all. They use it to describe a deeply burdensome, transformative calling. It's a weight.
A heavy weight. And if you're listening to this right now, I want to speak directly to you. If you are hearing this, it is not an accident. Your spirit recognized a pause in the noise of the world.
That's a beautiful way to say it.
Thank you. We are going to examine the intense season of pressure these sources say you've been enduring. We'll analyze why the urge to, push through is identified as a dangerous trap.
A very dangerous trap.
Yeah. And we're going to decode what the texts claim is a specific imminent threshold, the March 17th activation. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. And, it is a genuine privilege to hold space for this conversation with you today.
I feel the exact same way.
I really appreciate how you framed that opening. Because to truly grasp what Path of Inspiration and Divine Chosen Order are communicating, we have to adopt a very specific posture.
We have to slow down.
We have to slow down. The language used in these texts is highly cinematic. It is deeply grounded and intentionally disruptive to our modern anxieties.
It forces you to stop scrolling, basically.
Exactly. And as we look at these sources, our goal isn't to declare them as absolute, objective reality for everyone on Earth.
Right. We're just reporting on the framework.
Right. We want to step inside their framework and understand the profound psychological and spiritual mechanisms they are describing. The text suggests that if you are resonating with this message, you are currently in a liminal space. You are caught between a timeline that is collapsing and a destiny that is materializing.
Wow, a timeline collapsing.
Yeah, but getting from one to the other requires an agonizing process of refinement.
And that refinement, before we can even talk about shifting timelines or this March 17th threshold, we have to address the elephant in the room.
For the waiting room.
Yes, the waiting room. The texts spend a massive amount of time addressing a very specific, crushing pressure that the reader is presumed to be experiencing right now.
It's a very heavy season for a lot of people.
It is. And frankly, this is something I think anyone listening can relate to on a deeply human level. We've all had those eras in our lives where time just seems to stretch out. Time
just slows to a crawl.
Right. You watch doors that you were absolutely certain were meant for you suddenly slam shut. You walk down a career path or a relationship path, and out of nowhere, it feels like you are wading through wet concrete.
That wet concrete feeling is so accurate.
It's awful. And the universe, according to these sources, is deliberately slowing your momentum. But my immediate pushback to that, and I think the natural human reaction, is that when we see a blocked path, we assume we screwed up.
We internalize it as failure.
Exactly. We assume we missed an exit, or we read the map wrong, or, the universe has just abandoned us in the wilderness.
Left us behind.
Right. So how do these texts differentiate between a dead end that we are just stubbornly refusing to leave and what they call a divine delay?
That is the crucial distinction the authors are trying to make. The sources argue that the difference lies entirely in the underlying purpose of the pressure.
The purpose of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you hit a dead end of your own making, the friction usually comes from a refusal to learn a lesson. But a divine delay, according to Divine Chosen Order, is an active, highly orchestrated period of refinement.
Meaning it's intentional.
Highly intentional. The text claims that the universe operates in these massive unseen cycles. It's repositioning assets, moving people, and altering timelines behind the scenes.
Like a chessboard we can't see.
Exactly like that. And during this delay, the universe is allegedly removing the versions of you that are fundamentally incompatible with the opportunities that are coming.
Oh, wow. Removing the versions of you.
Right. The sources rely on some classic imagery here to explain this. They talk about coal.
Right. Requiring that sustained earth-crushing pressure.
In absolute darkness.
Yeah.
To fundamentally alter its molecular structure into a diamond. It's not just getting polished, its core geometry is changing.
That's a heavy thought.
And they talk about a seed. You know, a seed possesses the entire blueprint of a forest inside it.
But it just looks like a hard little rock.
Exactly. And it remains dormant until the heavy, suffocating weight of the soil presses against it hard enough to actually crack its outer shell.
It has to break.
It has to break. The mechanism they are describing is that transformation, in the very moment it is occurring, does not feel like growth.
What does it feel like?
It feels like annihilation.
Wow. It feels like annihilation. I mean, I get the seed and the diamond analogies, but honestly, sometimes they can feel a bit like greeting card platitudes, you know?
Sure, they can feel a little overused.
Yeah. When I was reading through the source material, a totally different analogy came to mind.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
It feels exactly like a smartphone running a massive fundamental operating system update.
Oh, that is perfect.
Right. You download the update and suddenly the screen goes completely black.
And you panic.
Yes. If you don't understand the mechanics of what is happening, you absolutely panic. You start mashing the power button, you try to swipe the screen, you think the phone is permanently broken.
But it's not broken.
No, the system isn't broken, it's rebooting. It's rewriting its core code. And if you force a hard reset while it's in that vulnerable state,
You corrupt the whole device.
exactly, you corrupt the device. And the texts are essentially saying to the reader, stop mashing the buttons.
Stop mashing the buttons. That is a brilliant modern translation of the concept.
Thanks. It just made sense to me that way.
Because if you are constantly mashing the buttons of your life-forcing networking connections, striving for a promotion that feels deeply misaligned, trying to resurrect relationships that have clearly expired.
Which we all do when we panic.
Right. If you do that, you are interrupting the update. The texts argue that this period of isolation and closed doors is actually a protective mechanism.
Protective? How so?
Well, if the opportunities meant for your updated self were given to the current, unrefined version of you, they would crush you.
Oh, because you wouldn't be ready.
Exactly. You wouldn't have the emotional regulation, the spiritual maturity, or the energetic capacity to sustain them.
You'd sabotage it.
Without a doubt. The universe doesn't waste the pain of the dark soil. It utilizes that exact pressure to carve out the internal real estate required to hold your actual calling.
To hold the actual calling, man! And that leads directly into the most radical and arguably the most difficult directive in the entire set of texts.
It really is a challenge.
Because once we realize the screen is black for a reason, the sources give an instruction that goes against every single survival instinct we have.
Every single one.
The directive is, stop what you are doing right now. Do not move.
Don't.
They argue that the chaotic forces of the world, which they refer to as the enemy or the collapsing system, are intentionally trying to trigger your panic.
They feed on emotion.
Right. They want you distracted by the noise, exhausted from chasing arbitrary milestones, so that you are too depleted to notice when the actual timeline shifts.
It's a strategy of exhaustion.
Exactly. But I have to challenge this practically. I mean, it's beautiful poetry to say do absolutely nothing, but how does that work in reality?
It's the ultimate question.
Right. If someone's rent is due, if they have a business to keep afloat or kids to feed, they can't literally sit in a chair and stare at a wall.
No, of course not.
So how does the text reconcile this spiritual command of stillness with real-world physical obligations?
That is the exact tension where spiritual philosophy meets psychological reality.
Okay.
When the text commands you to do nothing, it is not advocating for literal physical paralysis.
Or financial negligence.
Right. You don't just stop paying your bills. It is speaking to the internal posture of your striving.
The internal posture.
Yes. Let's look at the mechanics of what the author calls spiritual physics. The text states that when you drop your hands from a door, you've been desperately trying to batter down.
Which is so exhausting.
It is. When you drop your hands, you release a profound vibrational signature of trust, into the atmosphere.
A vibrational signature, what does that actually look like?
Demystify that term. Let's ground it in how human psychology and the nervous system actually operate.
Perfect. Let's bring it down to earth.
When you are frantically trying to force an outcome, your nervous system is trapped in a sympathetic state.
Fight, flight, or freeze.
Exactly. Your vision narrows. You are hyper-fixated on the threat of failure. And in that state of adrenalized panic, you are biologically incapable of recognizing subtle opportunities.
Because your brain is literally just scanning for predators, not possibilities.
Precisely. By choosing stillness, you are actually choosing to regulate your nervous system.
Oh, I love that.
You continue to pay your rent, you continue to do your job, but you completely detach your sense of inherent worth from the outcome of those actions.
You start forcing it.
You stop the obsessive plotting at 2 in the morning. You stop trying to manipulate people's perceptions of you.
That is so hard to do.
It is the hardest work. The text relies heavily on ancient wisdom here, specifically citing the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 15.
What does that say?
It says, "In returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength."
Quietness and confidence.
The author is arguing that your deliberate choice to stop panicking creates a sacred vacancy. It signals to the universe that you are finally out of your own way.
Out of your own way. Wow.
Stillness, in this framework, is not a retreat. It is a highly calculated, offensive strategy against the chaos of the world.
I want to linger on that 2 a.m. plotting you just mentioned, because Divine Chosen Order specifically calls out this bizarre disorientation that happens in the waiting room.
Yes, the 3 a.m. wake-ups.
Exactly. It describes waking up at 3 a.m. with a sudden, unexplainable alertness. You aren't necessarily having a panic attack, but your spirit feels like it's standing at attention.
Just completely wide awake.
Suspended in this liminal space between the old life and a future you can't see yet. It's the ultimate test of that stillness.
It really is the proving ground.
You're lying there in the dark, and the urge to mentally rehearse your problems is overwhelming.
Because the silence is deafening.
Right. But the text is pleading with the reader to recognize that this disorientation is just the vertigo of the timeline shifting.
And that vertigo brings us to the actual threshold.
The March 17th activation.
Yes. Because if stillness is the vehicle, what does the movement of this new timeline actually look like? This is where Path of Inspiration introduces the concept of March 17th.
And we really need to explain how the text frames this date, right?
Absolutely. Because it is vital to understand how the source views this. It does not describe March 17th as a loud, apocalyptic global event with blaring headlines.
It's not the end of the world.
No, not at all. In the text logic, time is not strictly linear. It is architectural.
Architectural. Meaning what?
Meaning, there are specific junctures where the cyclical gears of the universe align, creating a momentary opening where stalled energies can suddenly flow freely.
It's like a window opening up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
March 17th is positioned as one of these invisible structural doorways.
Let's break down the logic of that. I mean, why a specific date? Is the text suggesting there's a magical switch flipped on that exact day, or is it more symbolic of a convergence?
Well, the authors treat it as a literal convergence of spiritual cycles.
A literal convergence.
Yes, a moment where the preparation phase officially expires for those who have completed the internal work.
Okay.
But they emphasize that you will only notice it if you know what signals to look for, and these signals are incredibly subtle.
They aren't going to be billboard signs.
No, they are designed to bypass the loud analytical brain and speak directly to the regulated intuitive self.
The text actually outlines 3 very specific signals. And what struck me is that it doesn't present them as supernatural light shows.
Right.
It presents them as shifts in the mundane fabric of reality.
The everyday moments.
Yeah. So the first signal is a sudden cascade of synchronicity. Now, skeptics will immediately point to the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, right?
The frequency illusion.
Exactly. The idea that once you learn about something, your brain just starts noticing it everywhere. It's cognitive bias.
Like noticing red cars because you bought a red car.
Right. But the text argues this is different. It's not just noticing things. It's about meaningful, impossible alignments.
Synchronicity with purpose.
Yeah. Like you're wrestling with a deeply private question and a total stranger in a coffee shop makes an offhand comment that perfectly answers it.
Or you think of an old mentor and your phone rings 5 seconds later and it's them.
Yes. The text views this as the friction leaving your reality.
It is the alignment of the internal frequency with the external environment.
The inner and outer worlds matching up.
Exactly. When you are no longer operating out of frantic resistance, The text argues that the environment actually begins to cooperate with your deeply held intentions.
That leads to the second signal, doesn't it?
It does. The second signal builds directly on this. A dramatic heightening of intuition.
Heightened intuition. Let's explore the mechanism there.
The text says that decisions that previously required agonizing analysis, making endless spreadsheets, polling 10 different friends for advice.
Which is exhausting.
Completely exhausting. Suddenly, those decisions resolve as a quiet, undeniable, somatic knowing in the center of your chest.
A feeling in your body.
Right. From a psychological standpoint, this is what happens when you finally quiet the noise of external expectations.
When you stop asking everyone else what you should do.
Yes. Your core values and your subconscious pattern recognition can finally communicate with your conscious mind.
It's like the static clears.
Exactly. The text elevates this to a spiritual level, describing it as the universe downloading direct navigation coordinates into your spirit.
Wow. And the third signal is the arrival of unexpected doors.
Unexpected doors.
But the fascinating caveat the source provides is that these doors usually come disguised as totally ordinary moments.
They don't look like grand entrances.
No, it's not an envelope shoved under your door with $1 million check. It's an invitation to a mundane event you normally wouldn't attend.
Or a casual conversation that opens up a massive collaboration.
Exactly. But here's where I want to push back, or at least, play devil's advocate for the listener.
Please do.
The text warns of a final trap right at this threshold. A sudden, paralyzing wave of fear.
The threshold fear.
Yeah. Why do we do that? Why is it that the moment the exact opportunity we've been praying for finally presents itself, we're suddenly terrified to walk through the door?
That is one of the most profound human paradoxes, and the text addresses it with deep, deep compassion.
It really does.
Why do we fear the answered prayer? Because on a subconscious level, we understand that crossing that threshold requires a death.
A death, that's a strong word.
It is. But to walk into the new timeline, the old version of you, the version that was comfortable in the waiting room, the version that derived its identity from being a misunderstood victim of circumstance.
Oh, wow. That hits close to home.
That version must dissolve. The ego is terrified of its own obsolescence.
But because it kept us safe for so long.
Exactly. The biological wiring of the brain interprets any unknown territory as a potential threat, even if that territory is the promised land you've been seeking.
It just knows it's unfamiliar.
Right. So the text is urging the reader not to interpret that sudden spike of fear as a red flag or a sign that they are making a mistake.
It's not a warning to turn back.
No. It is merely the death rattle of the old self.
The death rattle of the old self. So the requirement isn't fearlessness.
Exactly. The universe, according to these sources, does not demand absolute, unwavering certainty.
That is such a relief to hear.
It only requires your willingness. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the willingness to take a single intuitive step forward while the fear is screaming at you to turn back.
But there is a massive practical gap between being willing to take a step and actually having the physical and spiritual energy to lift your foot.
There's a canyon between those two things.
Right. And this brings us to a part of the Divine Chosen Order text that I found incredibly moving. We are talking about listeners who might be so deeply burned out from the crushing pressure of the last few years that the idea of stepping into a new destiny just sounds exhausting.
It sounds like more work.
Yes. They don't want a new timeline. They want a nap.
They want rest.
And the text acknowledges this by leaning into the ancient story of Elijah and the juniper tree.
Yes. And to understand the psychological weight of this story, we have to look at the context.
Set the scene for us.
The prophet Elijah had just experienced the absolute zenith of his career on Mount Carmel. According to the narrative, he stood alone against 450 prophets of Baal.
That's a massive confrontation.
Huge. He called down literal fire from the sky and then experienced such a surge of supernatural adrenaline that he actually outran the king's chariot.
He outran a chariot?
Yes. He was operating at an unfathomable peak of output and visibility.
The ultimate high performer.
Exactly. But what happens the very next day?
He crashes.
The adrenaline crashes. Hard. A single death threat from Queen Jezebel shatters him completely.
Just one threat undoes all that victory.
Yes. He flees into the desolate wilderness, he collapses under a solitary juniper tree, and he falls into a profound depression.
He asks to die, doesn't he?
He does. He begs God to just let him die. His nervous system is completely fried. He has absolutely nothing left to give.
And this is where the text points out something revolutionary about how the divine responds to human burnout.
It shifts the whole paradigm.
It really does. Because if we are honest, we always expect God or the universe to operate like a demanding CEO, right?
Like a taskmaster.
Yeah. We expect heaven to show up with a lightning bolt, rebuke Elijah for his lack of faith, and hand him a new scroll of to-do lists like, get up, you have a destiny to fulfill.
Of crying and get to work.
Exactly. But the text highlights that the very first response from heaven to Elijah's total emotional and physical collapse was an angel appearing with a freshly baked loaf of bread and a flask of water.
Bread and water, the most basic sustenance.
Yes. And the instruction wasn't go prophesy. The instruction was eat and sleep.
It is a stunning portrait of divine empathy.
It really is.
The text uses this story to fundamentally reframe the deep physical heaviness that the reader might be experiencing right now.
The burnout.
Right. If you have felt a profound weariness settle into your bones over the last 72 hours or the last month, you are conditioned to view that fatigue as a personal failure.
You think you were losing your edge.
You think you're falling behind. But the source argues that this heaviness is actually a wilderness provision.
A provision, meaning it's a gift.
Yes. It is God or the divine intelligence drawing you into a chamber of presence.
A chamber of presence. What?
The universe recognizes that you cannot possibly compute the coordinates for the new March 17th timeline while your system is utterly depleted.
The battery is at 0%.
Exactly. The rest is not a delay of the mission. The rest is the prerequisite for the mission.
I want to dig into the psychology of why accepting that rest is so agonizingly difficult for us.
Because it is difficult.
It's incredibly difficult. Sitting under the juniper tree, doing nothing but eating and sleeping sounds like a vacation. But for the modern, driven soul, it feels like torture.
It feels like you're wasting time.
Yes. And the texts do not shy away from the root cause of this. They dive straight into what they call the dismantling of the performance-based gospel.
A deeply ingrained mindset.
They argue that our inability to rest is tied to a deeply hidden, incredibly toxic agreement about where our worth comes from.
Yes, the texts argue that we are trapped in the illusion of the if-then equation.
The if-then equation, explain that.
We operate under the subconscious belief that if I sacrifice enough, if I work 80 hours a week, if I am the most useful person in the room, then the divine will bless me.
Then I'll be worthy.
Right. Then I will earn my keep in the universe. We treat grace as a transaction.
Like a vending machine.
Exactly like a vending machine. But the source delivers a devastating critique of this. It says the system of endless striving you have been running in was never designed to produce the spiritual destiny you were created for.
Wow. It was never designed for that.
No. You are running a marathon on a track that leads to a completely different city.
And the most painful part of this realization is uncovering where that if-then equation actually came from.
The origin story.
Yeah. The author points out that the enemy didn't plant this lie in your head last week. It was planted in your childhood.
It goes right to the foundation.
It really brings in this heavy element of inner child psychology. We look at our relentless drive and we proudly call it ambition or a strong work ethic.
Well, put it on our resumes.
Exactly. But if we strip away the corporate buzzwords, so much of our striving is just a wounded inner child, utterly exhausted, still desperately trying to earn validation from someone who was never going to give it.
It is heartbreaking when you see it clearly.
It is. It stems from that very first moment in your life when love came with conditions, when a young heart looks at the adults in the room and quietly concludes, "My presence is not enough. To be chosen, I must be useful. To be loved, I must perform."
It is a tragic foundational wound.
And we just carry it with us.
We do. And you build an entire adult identity around managing that wound. You become the fixer.
The overachiever.
The person who never says no. But the text draws a hard line here, offering a theological and psychological reset.
What's the reset?
It states that the covenant over your life is written in blood, not in your performance.
Written in blood, that's a very absolute statement.
It is meant to be. What it means by that is your value is inherent, absolute, and non-negotiable.
You don't have to work for it.
The text argues that your worth was sealed in the architecture of the cosmos before you ever took a breath, before you achieved a single accolade, and before you ever failed.
You do not have to earn your right to exist.
No. You never did.
That distinction changes everything about how we operate. The text contrasts this by differentiating between adrenaline and anointing.
Such an important distinction.
Right. Adrenaline is that anxious, teeth-gritting, self-generated energy. It's the fuel of the wounded inner child trying to prove they belong in the room.
It runs on cortisol.
Exactly. It gets things done, but it leaves a wake of burnout and resentment.
It destroys you eventually.
Yeah. Anointing, as the text defines it, is a state of flow. It is a supernatural, effortless grace that empowers you to do the work without it draining your life force.
It's a completely different power source.
But to shift from adrenaline to anointing, you have to grieve the fact that your performance will never buy the unconditional love you were looking for.
You have to let that fantasy die. And once you stop performing to earn your worth, the texts identify a secondary detachment that has to happen.
A secondary detachment.
Yes. You have to stop seeking your direction and confirmation from the wrong places.
Wrong places, like where?
Because when we operate out of a wounded need for validation, we constantly outsource our intuition.
We ask everyone else what they think.
Right. We ask other people for permission to trust what we already know. The author provides a striking metaphor for this.
The map metaphor.
Yes. You cannot ask someone who only possesses a map of the valley to give you detailed directions to the mountaintop.
That is such a vivid way to frame it. Because when we get a glimpse of a massive, terrifying calling, when we sense this new timeline opening up, our immediate reflex is to run to our safety net.
We want consensus.
We do. We go to our parents, our best friends, our spouses, and we say, here is this wild, impossible thing I feel called to do. Do you think I can do it?
And what do they usually say?
They look at us with absolute terror in their eyes and tell us to play it safe.
Of course they do.
And we get angry at them. But the text is saying it's not their fault. They only have the map of the valley.
Their map is drawn based on survival.
Survival, security, the known world. They literally cannot read the coordinates of your mountaintop.
They don't have the key for that legend.
Right. And the text uses the biblical dynamic between Moses and Jethro to illustrate the danger of relying on the valley map.
Let's examine that dynamic because it perfectly encapsulates this transition.
Set it up for us.
So, Moses has this staggering, world-altering mandate from a burning bush to liberate an entire nation.
A massive calling.
In the wilderness, he leans heavily on his father-in-law, Jethro. Now, Jethro is a wise man, a Midianite priest, and he loves Moses.
He's not a villain.
Not at all. Jethro provides invaluable administrative advice. He teaches Moses how to delegate, how to set up courts of law, how to manage the crushing day-to-day logistics of leading 1 million people.
Practical wisdom.
Very practical. Jethro represents the absolute best of human wisdom and relational safety. But Jethro is not part of the covenant of the Promised Land.
He doesn't have the vision.
He does not carry the prophetic vision. Eventually, the text notes, Jethro packs up and goes back to his own land.
He leaves.
He leaves, and Moses has to face a terrifying reality. He has to lead the people based solely on the invisible voice of God.
He can't lean on Jethro anymore.
He has to learn to operate from his own divine authority without constantly returning to a human father figure for permission.
But wait, let's look at the practical fallout of this. Because if we're supposed to start seeking confirmation from the people with the valley maps, does that mean we're supposed to just isolate ourselves?
That is a very common fear.
Is the text advocating for a lone wolf mentality where we just cut off anyone who doesn't understand our calling? Because that sounds like a recipe for arrogance. Or worse, getting caught in a dangerous echo chamber.
That is a very important pushback, and the text is careful to navigate it. The author is not advocating for malicious detachment, burning bridges, or dismissing the value of wise counsel.
So Jethro still mattered.
Absolutely. Jethro's advice was essential for a specific phase of Moses' journey. What the text is describing is a spiritual graduation.
A spiritual graduation. I like that phrasing.
It is a fundamental shift in your internal hierarchy of truth. You still love the people in the valley. You still respect their boundaries.
You just don't let them drive the car.
You demote their opinions from the position of ultimate veto power over your life.
Veto power, that's good.
You elevate the quiet, internal whisper of the Holy Spirit, or your deepest, most regulated intuition, to the highest seat of authority. You stop waiting for a consensus before you take a step of faith.
Spiritual graduation, that makes perfect sense. It's about sovereignty over your own calling.
Sovereignty, yes.
And that brings us to the final and perhaps the most intimidating threshold discussed in the sources.
The quiet.
Yeah. Because once you are stripped of the need to perform for your worth, and once you detach from the need for human validation, you are left entirely alone in the quiet.
Just you.
There is no audience left. And this, according to the text, is the ultimate confrontation before the timeline can fully shift.
It is the confrontation with the authentic self.
The authentic self.
The author makes a piercing observation here. The true final block to your breakthrough isn't the chaotic world, it isn't the delay, and it isn't the lack of resources.
What is it?
The ultimate barrier is your unresolved relationship with who you are when absolutely no one is watching.
When the doors are closed.
When the performance stops, when the dopamine hits of external approval vanish, when you cannot use your productivity as a shield, who are you?
That is a staggering mirror to hold up.
Can you tolerate the unvarnished, raw version of yourself without instantly reaching for your phone to distract yourself from the silence?
Because the universe, according to this framework, demands integrity between the inner and outer worlds.
It demands alignment.
It requires a version of you that isn't louder in public than you are honest in private.
That is a powerful way to put it.
If you are deeply insecure and operating from a scarcity mindset in the dark, the universe cannot trust you with the abundance of the new timeline in the light.
It would crush you.
Exactly. In fact, Path of Inspiration actually references a specific tool for this exact internal restructuring.
The audiobook, right?
Yes, it mentions an audiobook called How to Awaken the Rich Mind Within You. And what's interesting is the source clarifies that this isn't about superficial money manifestation or wishing for a sports car.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It's a tool designed to confront those hidden, impoverished patterns of thought, the beliefs that tell you you aren't enough, and align your subconscious mind with true, inherent abundance.
The inner world have to hold the frequency before the outer world can manifest the reality.
Hold the frequency, that's it, exactly.
The shedding of the false self is the non-negotiable prerequisite for the miracle timeline.
This has to go.
You are standing on the fault line between two entirely different paradigms of existence. The old skin of the performance-driven self is suffocating you because it was never meant to stretch into this new era.
It's too small.
And this transition is inherently disorienting. When you stop performing and you stop seeking validation, it genuinely feels like something is ending. It feels like a death.
And that leads to the most vulnerable question a listener might be carrying right now.
I think I know what you're going to ask.
If we are in this waiting room and we feel this massive ending taking place, are we ending?
Are we disappearing?
Yeah. When the system we built our entire identity around collapses, do we collapse with it?
This is where the profound compassion of the texts shines through, and I want to convey their message with as much clarity as possible. The sources insist that you are not ending. The core, eternal, beloved essence of who you are is completely untouchable.
Untouchable.
What is ending is the exhausting, transactional agreement of conditional worth. What is collapsing is the fragile architecture of the false self that you had to build just to survive your childhood.
Just to survive.
What you are shedding is a skin that had to shrink, that had to apologize for its own existence just to make the people in the valley feel comfortable.
Wow.
The texts argue that you are not losing yourself. You are finally, for the first time, meeting yourself.
Meeting yourself, you know, the wait is over.
It is.
The agonizing, crushing preparation of the soil is complete. The texts claim that this quiet, invisible threshold, this March 17th activation, is occurring right now.
Right at this moment.
And the beautiful truth is that your obedience, in simply being still, your courage to stop running on the treadmill of performance, has already signaled your readiness.
Heaven has already responded.
As we bring this analysis to a close, Divine Chosen Order provides a specific set of declarations, asks a reader to physically anchor this realization.
To ground it in the body.
Yes. If you are in a place where it is safe to do so, the text invites you to place a hand over your heart. Not as some empty, mystical ritual, but as a deliberate physical act of reclaiming ownership over your own nervous system and your own spirit.
The source invites you to feel the rhythm of your own heart, to ground yourself in your physical body, and to recognize that your life is sustained by a grace that requires absolutely no effort on your part.
No effort at all.
It invites you to mentally or audibly declare an end to the old timeline. According to the blueprint of the text, you are invited to declare, I release the agreement that my worth is tied to my performance.
I release it.
I break every cycle of striving that was rooted in someone else's inability to see my true value. I'm not falling behind.
I am not falling behind.
I have not been forgotten in the wilderness. I am being meticulously positioned. My stillness is my ultimate obedience and my timeline is activating. I am seen. I am sealed. I am ready.
I am ready. I just want to speak warmly, human, to anyone listening to this. I want to acknowledge the immense courage it took for you to simply sit in the stillness with us today and engage with these deep, heavy concepts.
It takes bravery to stay in the quiet.
It is terrifying to stop running when the whole world and your own brain is screaming at you to hurry up. But you stayed.
You held your ground.
You held space for your own soul. You allowed yourself to explore the possibility of grace. And according to these texts, that is the most profound work you could possibly do today.
The overarching promise of these sources is one of deep, abiding peace.
Peace.
The frantic, adrenalized season of proving yourself is supposedly behind you. The wilderness has done its work. The texts ask you to remember that your destiny is not simply a geographical location or a job title that you magically stumble upon.
It's deeper than that.
It is a weight of glory, a level of responsibility that you had to grow strong enough in the dark to carry.
And you are strong enough now.
You have endured the crushing pressure. You have mastered the offensive weapon of stillness. The texts proclaim that the door is now open.
We will leave you with this final thought to mull over as you step back into your day. We've talked extensively about shedding the false self and letting go of the need to perform for the people holding the valley maps.
Right.
But if this waiting room has successfully stripped away your need for an audience, it begs a completely new, somewhat terrifying question.
The ultimate question.
Once you step through that door, once this new timeline activates, who are you going to choose to be now that you no longer have anyone left to please but yourself?